the big thing that we want to get across to people is we're trying to basically present to you a new uranium district, a high-grade emerging uranium district. And so our disclaimer, basically why forum, and so this is a big wordy slide, but there's kind of two main components here. And so I'll be talking about our Aberdeen project in particular, so the Thelon Basin, which we think is the next Athabasca Basin. And so we have the right geology, we have the right project, we have all the data. So this project came to us, basically Cameco, and that's where I kind of came in, used to work this project back in the last cycle. And so they let it go. Fukushima happened. Basically, they let go a lot of their worldwide exploration. The Thelon was one of those casualties. And Rick, our CEO, was on the ball when those claims lapsed, and we acquired basically $50 million or so of really good data. And then I jumped on board too, so I can kind of finish what I started. And so this is what we'll be talking about today. We have extensive experience in our management team. So Rick started this company in 2004, extensive experience in uranium as well as numerous other commodities. I came in here as the geologist that worked on the Aberdeen project before, groomed through Cameco, really good learning ground on how to find good tier 1 uranium deposits. Peter Wallenberg, he found some of the deposits in the Thelon back in the 80s. And of course, we take ESG very seriously as well, and we've acquired Alison Rippon Armstrong to help us with our Nunavut government relations. And so there's only a few really good uranium districts in the world for high-grade uranium. And so Athabasca, so Nathan talked about this in great detail, and that is a prime location. But there's also another location that has received very little exploration, and that's what we want to bring to you today, to investors and the world. And it's essentially the geologic analog of the Athabasca Basin. It's underexplored, incredibly underexplored. And it also hosts uranium deposits. It has 133 million pounds sitting in the ground. And also, Cameco, when I was working there, we made 2 initial discoveries into high-grade uranium that unfortunately we couldn't progress, but now we can. And so this is our project. I'm just going to hone right in. So we have about 90,000 hectares. We basically surround Orano's ground, and that's where that 133 million pounds is hosted in. So their ground here is in green, and then the deposits that make up that 133 million pounds are here at Tatiggaq and in Andrew. And Peter Wallenberg, who we brought on the team, he actually made the Andrew Lake and N discoveries in the early 80s. And Andrew Lake is Andrew is the name of his son. And so our discoveries, the Cameco ones that now we have, Forum has, is Tatiggaq and Tatiggaq. And that's where the basically $50 million of drilling as well as geophysics was done on this property. And we have all that good property that we were working back in the last cycle. And so size matters. And so I'm just going to hone into Tatiggaq. And so essentially one of the ways that we look for deposits in the Thelon is a geophysical method known as gravity. And so the Tatiggaq area has basically a 0.7 kilometer by 1.5 kilometer anomaly. And what's been drilled to date is only about 250 meters of this 1.5 kilometer long anomaly. So there's just a lot of potential here, a lot of expandability. And also the mineralization to date is also very shallow. And so we're looking at uranium mineralization under 200 meters. So when you think about in the future, if this sort of area goes into development, the capex of open pit kind of developments is a lot more amenable to getting these off the ground. And so also just to point out, these are the 4 drill holes that we did this past summer, which helped launch and get the money that we're going to spend for this summer. We raised $10 million at the end of last year, and that's going to go directly into the ground expanding this. And so last year, we drilled into the Tatiggaq area to showcase what the potential is there. And this is our intercept. So not, unfortunately, not as crazy good as the Canalaska stuff, but hopefully someday it's the dream to be able to hit that sort of level. But so far what we have is about 2.25% over 11 meters. And so this is our grade. So again, just as Nathan was showing, all that red, all that yellow, and all the black, that's the uranium in the core. And so really good grades. Again, what we're looking and trying to showcase here is that we have the potential here to host the same kind of level of deposits that the Athabasca Basin has. And then another aspect that we're doing in this for this project is also looking, we're using all the old data that Cameco had, which is public and we have, but we're also trying to advance some new techniques. And so an area, geophysical survey that's intrigued me for a while is passive seismic, also known as ambient noise tomography. And so we've used this extensively to help us target at Tatiggaq. And so this is just an image looking northwest, kind of along the trend that we'll be drilling. And essentially what passive seismic does is give a velocity model, which helps you map alteration, which is key to finding these types of deposits, as well as the structures. And so what this has allowed us to do, we have our nice gravity anomaly to chase. We know that there's very fertile structures throughout this, but now it's giving us actually the depth in which to target, which I think will de-risk and help our success incredibly as we move forward here, drilling this target this summer. So here's the mineralization to date. And then now, based on that, we kind of have the Z, or the depth of formation of where we can actually start drilling and seeing additional zones. And so that's the big upside here. We have our mineralization in red here, so about 200 meters. And now we have targets all through the whole 1.5 kilometer to test. So that's the expandability and real upside to this, just this deposit alone. And so we've raised the money at the end of last year, so we have 10 million, about 9.8 in the bank right now. We're planning on doing a 10,000 meter drill program, 2 drills. We'll be starting in about a month. We have our main target, of course, Tatiggaq. We really want to expand that as our primary focus. So we're going to spend about 8,000 or so of that 10,000 meters at Tatiggaq. But that'll equate to about 30 holes for perspective. And then we have other, both 3 main, but a few other high priority targets that we'll spend about 2,000 meters or about 10 holes on throughout the project. And so this 10 million is largely going to go into the ground via drilling. And then there's going to be a little bit of geophysics as well. We're going to do gravity. And if this passive seismic is as good as I think it's going to be, we'll also be doing a lot of that as well on these additional targets. And so here's just our stock chart. Again, we're dirt cheap right now, so we're about 11 cents, about a $33 million market cap, and like I said, 9.8 million in the bank, so we're fully funded to do this exploration. And then the stock chart there, just to highlight, you know, how our stock performed when we released the results in the fall based on our drilling that we did this past summer. So you can see that moved up substantially from about 6 cents up to 20 cents. And then we've fallen back a bit in the lull here because, of course, we're not exploring until June. But that's the upside here. So now, you know, once we start getting the drill going and we showcase the results, we really think that our stock price will respond to that. And then this is just the big overall value proposition. And so the big aim of Forum is to build the next high-grade uranium district. You know, a good jurisdiction, you know, it's in Canada, it's a good property. So this image here is our property. So our 90,000 hectares superimposed on a very fertile part of the Athabasca Basin. And so just showcasing how many, you know, tier 1, as Nathan said, deposits can be, you know, in this area. in a property the size that we have the right geology, we have the right structures, all the building blocks to really have good uranium deposits. And so essentially the Aberdeen project is equivalent to having the Athabasca Basin to yourself in the 1970s. Difference being is we know a lot more about how to find these deposits. And that's it. Thank you very much.